Hello, Gulu, MEM Adult Literacy Project participants. Good to see you guys again. This is the KIC training of Luo and English literacy development for the Mother Earth Montessori Adult Literacy Project. Today, we are going to be talking about evaluation and assessment. How do we verify learning? The conventional methods that all of you are aware of, because I'm sure that all of you have experienced these. Direct measures, we're going to separate these into direct measures and indirect measures. Direct measures include homework, quizzes, exams, reports, essays, research projects, case study analysis, and rubrics for oral and other performances. Although um, such things as research projects, maybe case studies, analysis, and oral performances. Some conventional schools are now offering the possibility for video um, profiles and for video essays to be uploaded. Those, I think, move beyond the conventional methods. What we're really probably talking about is homework, quizzes, exams, reports, and essays, maybe research projects. The traditional assessment tool that I'm sure that you all are also aware of are grades, A, B, C, D, F, right? Um, Sometimes we have indirect measures. Uh, those include course evaluation, student surveys, course enrollment evaluation, attendance, things like that. Although those are usually used internally by the institution, um, they're maybe provided back to the instructor afterwards, so the instructor might glean some information about the effectiveness of their class. Uh, but we don't really uh, we don't really use those measures as accountability measures. They're sort of soft measures to tell the stakeholders, the immediate stakeholders, that you are being reflective about your teaching practice and your interaction with students. Okay, so here's the a guiding question for today. Are tests, exams, and quizzes, those sort of conventional means of evaluating learning, are they a reliable way to measure learning? We all assume sort of that it is a reliable way of learning because it's what we grew up with. It's what is in universities. It's what's in colleges. It's what's in standardized education all over the world. But is it a reliable way to measure learning? Another question here is what percentage of learning is forgotten after a test, a quiz, or an exam? So the reality, what we know from research is that people tend to forget a significant portion of what they learned after a test. Within 1 hour, learners forget approximately 50% of new information. Within 24 hours, this decreases to about 70% of the information. So this suggests that if we take a test quickly after we get some information, we might be able to pass the test, but we can't necessarily reproduce that information the next day or the next week. Or if we all went to college or the university, how much of the information that we got or took tests on in the university is still with us in this moment today? on how much have we forgotten. And so my question is, if you forgot the learning, did you really learn it? Right? Some sources suggest that up to 90% of information is forgotten within a month. This suggests that that tests and exams and quizzes are maybe not the most reliable method of evaluating or measuring learning. Of course, the rate of forgetting depends or it varies depending on factors such as the meaningfulness of the information, the method of learning, and the presence of reinforcement or repetition. And that's what this training is really all about, is this last paragraph of information here. So, going forward, if, and this is a big if because I don't totally know, but it was suggested in some of the homework from this last month that maybe grades are being used as a way of evaluating the adult learners in the literacy program. It would make sense that that was a default mechanism for assessing the learning of the individuals in your classes. And what I'm saying right now is that there will be no more grades. Grades are extremely ineffective. So research suggests that traditional grading systems may not always accurately measure learning. I will say they rarely accurately measure learning. And this is the crux of the situation that we're in, is the precision of grades depends on the reliability of the assessments. Assessments are generally designed by the instructors, not by the students. And so the instructors are, an exam says really more about the instructor or the entity or the person or the group of people, the committee that created the exam, than it does about the learning that's happening within the classroom. Even with high reliability, there can be overlap in the true scores of students, making it difficult to distinguish between different levels of learning. If it's difficult to distinguish the learning, then this is not an accurate way of evaluating the learning. There is an emotional factor here as well. Grades can have an adverse effect on students' motivation and may not provide meaningful feedback from improvement. I will say that they almost never provide meaningful feedback for improvement. They provide some amount of feedback. That feedback's not necessarily an evaluation of their learning. It's an evaluation of whether they performed well on the test or not. And the test, depending on, or the exam or the assessment, is really a measure that demonstrates the psychology or the expectations of the particular assessing body itself. Um, we will kind of dice that up. We will uh, investigate that as we go forward. Um, but I'm going to suggest here a different way of moving forward with evaluations. Starting now, I would like the MEM Adult Literacy Project to use rubrics. A rubric is an explicit set of criteria used for assessing a particular type of work or performance. So this provides a spectrum of expectations, understanding that just as you in your homework from June have described to me that you have assessed that there are different levels of learners within your particular class. There may be low level learners, medium level learners, and high level learners. Um, this does the same thing, but it applies. It basically creates those categories for you and allows you to set up a language around what it means to be a high level learner. What does it mean to be a low level learner? What does it mean to be a medium level learner, right? So we're going to provide more details than a single grade or a mark, so that the um, so that we can help ourselves to assess more objectively. This is providing us a sort of as instructors a sort of accountability in the way that we're analyzing the responses of our students. Rubrics can address issues related to assessment by reducing grading time, increasing objectivity, and conveying timely feedback to students. That is, of course, if you're providing the students with the rubric in advance and really explaining the rubric for them so that they understand what those expectations are. Rubrics are not are designed. Rubrics are designed typically within a grids type structure, um, and they provide sort of an x and a y axis so that you can say what your expectations are uh, and what categorically or what qualitatively it means to be within one of those categories or another. And so I've created a sample. This is a sample basic literacy rubric that you can all start to use immediately for the adult literacy project. Um, so we'll have multiple slides here, which will go through this grid type format and provide. We'll read through each one of those expectations. See the above 1 to 4 needs improvement, approaching expectations, meets expectations, or exceeds expectations. That way, we understand where our students are at, but our students also understand that there's a place to go. That if they are approaching expectations in one particular category, they have the language with which to look into the future or to look down the trail and see what they need to change to progress. Right? So, uh, basic literacy skills, letter recognition, right? We will start from number 1. Okay. Needs improvement. Recognizes few letters, or they frequently confuse or maybe guess at a letter. And if that's true, if they ever really struggle recognizing letters, then they're in the category of needing improvement. Approaching expectations here is recognizes some letters, but may confuse similar letters. Meeting expectations is they recognize most letters with minimal prompting. Exceeding expectations is that they recognize all uppercase and lowercase letters accurately and quickly. Some of you in your homework mentioned phonemic awareness, so we're going to put that here. um, Again, starting on the right, difficulty in identifying individual sounds and words would be needs improvement. Identifies beginning sounds or struggles with middle and ending sounds does not meet expectations. Meeting expectations, this is number 3, is identifies most sounds in words with some errors. Okay, so that's going to meet our expectations. We're expecting that. If they're in the high level learners, then they're probably identifying that they identify and manipulate beginning, middle, and ending sounds in words fluently. So when I hear feedback about high level learners, I will be expecting that all of those high level learners are in this category of exceeding expectations. If they're not, and they're just meeting expectations, well, then we're going to create a new category. Uh, Sight word recognition. Do they struggle with sight words, frequently guessing? They, then they need improvement, right? If they can only recognize a few sight words, but they need prompting, well, then they're not meeting expectations, but they're approaching expectations. If they read common sight words with minimal hesitation, that's where we want them to be, right? That's our expectation. If they read a large number of sight words automatically and in context, well, then they're already on to the next level. They are exceeding the expectations for this class. Decoding. This is a phonics awareness category. Again, from the right, they rarely decode successfully. They rely heavily on guessing. This is what we want to improve. We want to move them from guessing to needing support for their guesses. Okay, so this is what we're after in our literacy development. Um, they are not meeting, but they're approaching expectations if they attempt to decode frequently, but they need support or guesses. If they are, if they can decode most simple words correctly and only occasionally need help, then they are meeting expectations. If you can give them a word that is unfamiliar and they understand the phonics rules and they can interpret that and reproduce that accurately and independently, then they are already exceeding expectations, right? Reading fluency reads word by word, but they have to pause frequently. They have mispronunciations all the time. That's uh, that's needing that's needing some improvement. So we need to give them a lot of help. If they're reading slowly, haltingly, like they stop, they lack expression, they lack accuracy, but they are able to sort of get through the text. Uh, then they're not meeting expectations, but they're approaching it. If they can read with general accuracy and a steady pace with a little bit of expression, then they're meeting expectations. That's where we want to get everyone to. The number three is what we're aiming for. If they can read aloud smoothly, excuse me, with appropriate pace and expression and very few errors, they have exceeded the expectation of our class. Comprehension, this is both oral and written. So when you're speaking to people and when they're reading and writing. If they have a limited understanding or they have a difficulty answering a question about a text or difficulty answering a question that you're presenting to them in class, um, then they're struggling and they need a lot of improvement. If they understand the basic idea, but they struggle with the details and the deeper meaning, then they're only approaching comprehension. They're working through it. They're trying to put it all together. But we're trying to move them to the next level. It's from number 2 to number 3 here. answers basic comprehension questions correctly. Some details may be missed. That's okay. They're meeting expectations. If you can have a conversation with your students, um, or if they can read a text and then they can answer literal and inferential, they can infer the questions, they can summarize and connect ideas, they're exceeding expectations. Writing and spelling, spelling again from the right, spelling lacks phonetic basics. It's hard to read, it's hard to understand. They're missing letters. They- they're jumping uh, uh, to different pieces of the part, and so it's hard for you to even understand exactly how they're putting it together. So we need to work with them on a very structural, basic level. Many so approaching expectations would be like, okay, well, they have many spelling errors, and the phonetics of their spelling is inconsistent. Now, in English, the idea of spelling and phonetics is quite troublesome, and we all know that, because depending on the word, the phonetics change, especially depending on where the word comes from. So um, it's important to have an awareness of that. So for example, if an emerging reader or an emerging literacy student of mine spells physics with an F, I would say they're actually approaching. It's an error, but they're actually getting the phonetic awareness. That phonetics is consistent, but they're not actually um, they don't know that there are different ways to achieve the same phonetic awareness within English. And so if they're spelling if they're spelling high frequency words correctly, um, and we evaluate their phonetic spelling to be evident, then they're meeting expectations. If they're in the fourth category here, where they spell common words correctly and they're able to use phonetic spelling for unfamiliar words. And maybe this is an example of using an F, or for deciding for physics that they're going to use pH. That's a very advanced skill. It's an advanced spelling skill. Um, so we're going to watch for things like that. When it comes to their writing, if they're using fragments or run-on sentences, within the context of the demographics that we're dealing with in Gulu, run-ons may be a little punctuate. When we consider run-on, it's how do you apply? It's a question of applying punctuation, and so I'm not so concerned with that. Um, in an emergent literacy environment. Certainly by level three, they should have some awareness of punctuation. Um, but in level two here, approaching awareness, sentences may lack correct structure or punctuation, but they're pretty much formulating the sentences and the structure the way it sounds in speech. When they're able to write simple sentences with few errors or in structure or in punctuation, um, then we're saying from a writing perspective, they are meeting expectations. And then when they write complete, grammatically correct sentences with punctuation and capitalization, only then Do they exceed expectations? And I can tell you this, that that meeting, that level of exceeding expectations is difficult for even for a lot of middle school or high school native English speakers to achieve in the United States. So, um, so with regard to the writing, I think that there's a little bit more flexibility that we can offer our students. Vocabulary use. If they have a very limited vocabulary or may use incorrect, vague, or vague words, um, it's common for people just learning a language to try to use a word if they're in a vulnerable situation, if they trust the people that they're around, they may try to use a word that's incorrect to get across their meaning. That's a high level of risk, even though it's an inaccurate word. So when I see the word vague words here, um, well, a vague word could be a word that they've heard, but they didn't interpret it accurately. Um, and that's okay. They need to practice and have the ability um, to test their knowledge, right? Uh, then if they are approaching, they have a limited vocabulary use, but they're often repeating words. They're repeating words or repeating words. In the case of our students in the in Gulu, in these first two categories, you might have people switching to a choli to say what they want to say, and or switching to luo. I'm sorry, and that's an interesting situation because then they can convey meaning. What they want to do is convey meaning, and they know that you know luo, and so they may use a luo word in place of an English word. That's okay and that's acceptable, even though, but it's demonstrating where they're at with English, and so they cognitively are aware that they don't have the word in English, but they might have the word in luo, and and so we need to give them the support to move into the less familiar language, right? If they are meeting expectations in the vocabulary use, they're using grade appropriate. That's a very subjective. Um, it's a very subjective qualification. Grade appropriate, but they're using appropriate vocabulary and they're using it effectively. So it will. What's grade appropriate or what's appropriate in the context of the Luo community that you're engaging with will be different than other places. Um, and lastly, they are exceeding expectations if they're using varied but appropriate vocabulary in speaking and in writing. All right. I will provide that rubric for you all in a document, in a text document that you can download from the Google Drive. The 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 next thing that we're going to do as a group is we're going to develop our own rubrics. Um, so the above rubric is a sample rubric. I've already discussed where that rubric as a sample rubric doesn't quite meet, doesn't quite speak exactly to the community of learners that we're all that the GOOM literacy, adult literacy class is dealing with. Um, and so we're going to feel free to adjust that rubric uh, and make that rubric uh, what it needs to be to actually state what our expectations are for the community members that we are that we're engaging with. So the above rubric is sample. It's a place to start. It's designed to be manipulated. It's designed to be changed. All institutions should develop their own unique rubrics in order to explicitly state the local expectations. Your local expectations, whatever your MEM Adult Literacy Project expectations are, that's what you need to state. So we can feel free to change this rubric, right? And provide language with which a student can plan. The idea is that a student can see where they need to go, how, what, where their progress will lead them. Like, what are they trying to achieve? Oh, I'm going to back up here. Okay, so in the in the true form of this training, we want to go through what our students are going through. So I've developed a rubric for your homework going forward. Right? This homework, I will now evaluate everybody's homework based on this rubric. And I will also provide this rubric in the Google Drive so that everyone can download that and they can evaluate it. Number one, information conveyance. When I ask a question for homework, you are conveying information to me. If that information, starting from the right, if it needs improvement, that information lacks clarity and it lacks a prosaic format. That means that maybe you're using bullet points or you regurgitate the question above and then you just write bullet points of this. That needs improvement because what I want to hear is a conversation. I want to hear you talk in your writing about what you experienced. All right. So if you're approaching expectations for me, it means that you're clearly identifying the information. The information is presented clearly and it's conveyed clearly, but it lacks a prosaic format. Um, so you may be able to demonstrate uh, via, again, bullet points and you may clearly be able to convey those expectations or convey that information. But if you're not doing it in your own voice, then then it's only approaching expectations, right? If you modify the way that you write and you write in a prosaic format and the information is clearly conveyed, then you're meeting expectations. So I want to hear your story and how it happened. And there are plenty of you that are already doing this. There are some of you that are in the number two category of only approaching expectations because you're putting number one, number two, number three, blah, 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 blah. That's not what we're doing. I want to hear your voice. If your information is presented clearly and it's conveyed in a prosaic format and it's using your authentic voice, I can hear your voice, your choice of words, which is different than another person's choice of words. You are exceeding expectations. I want your responses to be reflective. So, starting from the right, a response that just regurgitates a group observation and lacks evidence of author introspection. It lacks evidence of the author as being a part of the actual response. That needs improvement. So what I want to see is I want to see you say something unique and I want to see that you are thinking and coming up with critical responses for yourself. If your response demonstrates the group observations, but it lacks introspective thoughtfulness, then it's approaching introspection. So you're able to say kind of what the group feels, what everybody in the GOOM group says. It's like, okay, um, but it but it's in your own way of demonstrating the group observations. It's like, well, that's that's not really what I want to see. What I want to see is I want to see you be able to demonstrate and approach a unique observation, but I want you to provide introspective thoughtfulness. I want you to say how you're thinking about this because how one person thinks about something is different than another person thinks about something. So it's fine to be able to uh, present the way that most of the people felt in the group, but I want to hear what you have to say. And if you want to exceed expectations, you're going to demonstrate a very unique observation and introspective thoughtfulness of yourself as the author. Lastly, this actually ties into the other two, it's risk. How risky are you with your response? If your response, starting on the right, if your response does not demonstrate vulnerability, but instead it only presents safe interactions that avoid taking personal responsibility, you're just presenting what happened with the group. You're just like, well, this is what happened. This is what happened. Um, that needs improvement. What I want to see is how how do you affect change within this group? I want you to tell me how you affect change within the students. You personally, not the other people, not generally what happened. I want to know about you in particular. So you're approaching expectations here if your response demonstrates a little bit of vulnerability. Um, but if you only focus on successes, you're not really taking responsibility. I want to hear about the failures and the successes, right? I want to hear about what happened that you are going to change that's going to show me that you're striving for improvement in you. If your response demonstrates some vulnerability, um, and possibly suggests some areas for personal improvement, then you're meeting my expectations. If your response demonstrates vulnerability from the author by exposing your personal weakness and owning and your ownership of responsibility, you're saying, this is what happened. It didn't go well. This is what I did. This is what I need to change. That is exceeding expectations. So, homework for the next month, for August, is that I would like you to describe a moment in one of your lessons that did not go as planned. I want you to tell me how you responded to that. How did you respond when one of your lesson plans did not go well or did not go as planned? Maybe it still went well. That's okay. Based on your response, maybe it went great. That's fantastic. Number two, I'd like you to describe a moment when you experienced an interaction with a student, or maybe it's multiple students, that you where you felt ineffective as an instructor. I want you to tell me what you would change in yourself in your response if you had the opportunity to relive that moment. What would you change? And what would you change in you? Don't tell me about what you wish the other people would change in them. Tell me about what you would change in you if you had the opportunity to go back and relive the moment a second time. That's all for this month. I look forward to your responses, and with that, we will see you in the live training.